All right, another episode of Hot Takes with Hot Idiots. We're on episode 8 now. It's happened quick.
This
Uh,
is moving extremely quickly, way
this,
faster than I expected it to be.
oh yeah, the season is flying by. I always hear about how long the season is. We just finished week 7, so we're 1/3 of the way through the regular season already.
Wild. I'm excited about the second, third.
My
See
only
what it
regret
has.
is that it doesn't last more weeks. I'm ready for more.
The thing that's really exciting is this next third. I think that we have a lot of people coming off of IL in this next third that is going to totally change the landscape. I think of specifically a lot of pitching for some of the teams we have.
Yes and no, because I expect a bunch of more people to go onto the IL. So it's just a constant rotating door. So
It is.
we'll see what happens. Current standings, we have the Butthole Showers up on top, and we have Thomas's team safely at the bottom. He's not very close. He's 20 games back from first place right now after 7 weeks.
Cannot believe that.
Believe it.
What a mountain to overcome.
Yep. And he's convinced he's going to come back. He's not worried. I should say we don't have Ethan this week. I gave him about, I don't know, 1 hour notice, and turns out he has plans some nights outside of me. Sometimes I forget everyone's world doesn't revolve around me.
That's very unfortunate.
So last time we did the podcast, we were on week 5. So I wanted to do just a quick recap on some of the matchups that I liked in weeks 6 and 7. So week 6 had Art versus Chris. And at the time, I'm still thinking of Chris as this powerhouse batting team. So in my mind, it was like these two great batting teams facing off against each other. Unfortunately, Chris didn't really have a great batting. He only had 5 home runs and only 3 stolen bases, so it didn't end up being that great of a matchup. But it is one that I enjoyed watching. Are there any certain teams you just keep an eye on during the week?
I'm always keeping my eye on Art. You can't help but keep an eye on the moves that he makes off the waiver wire. And as soon as he picks someone up, you're like, oh, duh.
Duh.
Like,
Yeah.
how did I not see that?
I always
Because
wonder how little
he goes off.
I'm curious if he's putting a lot of effort into it or very little. He's just makes a couple moves every now and then, doesn't really give a shit, or if he's no, I got to beat all these people because they're paying attention to me and they respect me.
Oh, absolutely. The bane of my existence is having maybe one sub going into Thursday or Friday and checking to see who I'm going up against and seeing that they have 5 subs left. And I'm like, well, I'm screwed.
Yeah, and then they just don't use them because I feel like
They never use them.
there's people that use their subs and there's people that don't. But yeah, that week 6 matchup, Art and Chris, Art had 271 at bats to Chris's 181. I do think Chris has an amazing group of people at batting. I know he has some injuries. He is just not filling his roster. He needs to make more pickups and drop people, I think, because his at bats numbers have just collapsed, and his batting performances have with it. Week 7, so this most recent week, I really liked watching you versus Scott because it was first versus second place, which is always interesting to me when it happens. It's always just a game I'm going to keep my eye on.
Tune into. Boy, that was rough. I thought I had the win going into, gosh, it was the 5th inning of the Mets game. Chris Bassett had the lead, and the Mets dropped the ball. Sure enough.
They messed up.
They messed up, and, they ended up taking the win, but that doesn't give the win back to Bassett, which would have put me in the lead. So,
Yep. And
just tough.
so that ended in a tie, which is kind of boring, I guess. And then Vince versus Art, just, father versus son. The two people that know about fantasy baseball facing off. I know Vince has had a slow start, but he still went 4-4. So it was a good matchup. I was pulling for Vince to win. It would have been a nice upset for Vince had he won this one.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, a 4-4-2 week is not your worst week. That you could do so much worse. Right now I think Vince is 2-7 up against Ethan at the moment. That's a tough loss right there if those numbers stay where they are. A 4-4-2, you get 4 wins, you get 4 losses, no big deal. That's not a huge number of losses. The 2 ties is helpful. Honestly, it's kind of odd how those ties are weighted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say if I don't have 6 wins, I feel annoyed with the matchup. Maybe that's because Scott, Vince, Thomas, and Aaron, all 4 weeks, the last 4 weeks, I've had 5 wins. I can't get over the hump. I'm not getting beat, but I'm not beating anyone, so it feels real bad right now. But so what we're going to do now, since 7 games down, 1/3 of the way through the season, I kind of wanted to go through and take a look at how everyone was doing, kind of look at their previous matchups, and then I'll have you guess how their team improved or didn't improve. First team, and this is going in order of how they were ranked at week 2. So I know that's confusing, but so you'll have to guess if they improved or didn't do as well. So we'll use Ethan as an example here. Ethan with team Ethan's Bees, 4 Bs, sorry. Week 2, he was 10th overall, 7th in batting, 9th in pitching. You can take a look at his scores. It's weird that he was ranked 10th because he started off 6-4 versus Art and then 5-3 versus me. So looking at his record since then, 2-8, 7-1, 3-6, 2-8, 3-6. So his only good week really was versus Thomas, 7-1. Since week 2.
That was the highlight right there. And I'd venture to guess that his batting's ticked up a little bit. Just taking a look at his roster right now, he's got Chisholm, Freeman. Chisholm obviously was injured or had some slight injury, if I remember correctly, a week ago or something along those lines. But he heated up pretty well over the past number of weeks. Marte is heated up. He's got Mark Canha on his roster now. Just picked up Austin Hayes. I'd venture to guess that his batting kind of jumped up a little bit. But I think what he is still struggling with is probably the wins, the pitching overall.
Mm-hmm. And so if we were doing the leagues where it's just a win or a loss, there's no 5-5 or anything like that, his record would be 3-4. And what this is judging him off of, this card where I said he was 10th overall, would be if we were doing a roto, right? So do you think overall he's still in 10th place or he's improved at all?
I would say that he's improved slightly.
All right.
Well, he jumped up a little bit.
You would be wrong. He's still 10th place on the rankings. He went from 7th in batting to 10th in batting, and he actually maintained 9th place in pitching. So you want a low score is better for these rankings, like the lower the better. He was a 64 overall, so that's placing his rank in all the categories added up. And now he's a 76, so he's actually gotten a lot worse. He can't get worse than 10th place, so his rank's the same. But his team's gone down a little bit. And some of the notes I put on Ethan's team, he has 4 categories with only 1 win on the season. 4 categories. So home runs, RBIs, saves, and strikeouts. He's only gotten 1 win in each of those categories over 7 weeks. ERA, whip, and runs, he's 4-3. And his average is 6-1. His record in those. So, it's crazy to me because if you look at his stats here, if you look in ERA and whip, he's 8th and 6th overall in those. And then runs, he's 9th overall. So it's actually really good luck that he's 4-3 in every single one of those categories. That's actually showing a lot of really good luck that he's had there, because he's really below the average, right? And then his batting average is 4th place, which that's good. That's where you want to be. You would guess over 7 weeks, if you're 4th overall in batting average, you're like, okay, you probably have 4, maybe 5 wins in that, right? Well, he has 6. He's 6-1. So I think he's actually gotten pretty lucky in all 4 of those categories. And those 4 categories are 18 of his 28 wins. So 64% of his wins on the season, I think it's almost inflated. So like to go back to the standings right now, Ethan is 8th. But yeah, like looking at his numbers, breaking it down, I do think so far his team has had the worst performance. And I think his record is a little bit lucky based on just how I see his stats.
Room to improve. That's what we'll take away.
Room to improve. And he's made some crazy play. Like Thomas's team is basically AFK, which I get, right? But Ethan makes bold choices. He's all about hot choices, hot takes, right? I mean, he just straight up dropped Aaron Nola.
He did.
I forget who else he recently. I think he just dropped Duvall recently. Like, I don't know. He has no attachment to a name. A name is nothing to him. He'll drop players, and maybe that's the right mentality to have. I don't know. But
it was interesting to see that he still has Devin Williams on his team. Who credit to him, he's sticking it out with the guy, and every once in a while, Devin gets 1 save a week or so. But dropping a true closer and keeping Williams on your team like that, I would have sided with keeping Doble. All
right, so yeah, dropping Duvall was insane to me. However, I haven't picked him up. No one else has picked him up. He's still on free agency.
No, he's not. I think someone else picked him up, didn't they?
No, because I tried to pull the trigger on him today, but I was just like, you know what? I've already been through this. I have too many closers, and I don't need to start this many. So I didn't pick him up either, and I could. He's very pick upable. He's on a good team, and he's a closer. I think he should be rostered. But I don't know. So I can't judge him too much when no one else has actually picked him up yet. If you could promise me a closer that gets me a 2 ERA and a 1 WHIP and only 1 save a week, and I'll say 0 strikeouts, I would roster them and start them all week. Even just for the 1 save. Because there's a lot of weeks where 3 saves wins you a week. So if you could guarantee me just the 1 save, I'll take that. I need that in my life. All right, so Thomas with Team Thomas's Rad Team. He would be 1-5-1, which is the normal win record. At week 2, he was ranked 9th overall. He was actually 3rd in batting, but dead last in pitching, 10th. Notable weeks for him. He went 5-5 versus me, and he went 6-4 versus Vince. Those are his 2 best weeks. He's had some pretty terrible weeks. 1-8, 2-7, 1-7. So, yeah, a team with some promise. I will toot my own horn for the beginning of the year when I said Thomas had a great team. I thought it would be poorly managed. So, I think that's held true. I guess this is kind of spoiled because he can't be 10th place, so he couldn't have gone down from 9th. How do you feel like Thomas's team has progressed, though, since week 2?
I think he might be similar. I think he may have stayed the same.
Stayed 9th? I mean, he was all the way up at 3rd in batting, which is kind of crazy.
It really is. I mean, I'm just taking a look at last week's matchup against
Nick. Yeah.
The pitching is his ERA is high, WHIP is a little bit high, saves are maybe a touchdown from what could win you a week, but
he's still 9th. He went from 3rd batting overall to 4th, so he's actually still doing pretty well in batting. His team's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his home runs, look at his stolen bases even last week. Decent average.
Yeah, he's 2nd overall in stolen bases in the entire league. 2nd in runs batted in. He's 2nd overall in the whole league.
Yeah.
Pitching is still 10th, though, and this is where he's, crushed. I mean, he's overall ranked 10th in runs, wins, strikeouts, ERA, and WHIP. Those are all 10th. And all of his categories look bad. I mean, record-wise, he's last place, so it's not surprising. Stolen bases, he's 4-2-1. I just wanted to highlight that to show even if you went all in on stolen bases, you can still rack up losses. Home runs and saves, he only has 3 wins in both those categories. Runs, RBIs, averages, ERA, WHIP, he's only won twice in all of those categories. And then wins and strikeouts, he's only won once out of 7 weeks. Pretty bad.
He's got, I missed this, he's got 4 benched batters and only 1 pitcher on the bench.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like that has to be why his batting is so high. He doesn't have many off days because he's still holding on. After 7 weeks, Thomas still has a good batting team. That's why I was worried when I faced him. Because I was like, I don't know, his batting's legit. He still has a lot of at-bats. He still gets a lot of stats, and I'm not good at batting.
Merrifield is warming up. That's nice for him as well.
All right, so that's Thomas. Let's move on to Lucas. When we originally did this at week 2, despite you having a pretty good start, 5-1 versus me and then 3-4 versus Chris, you were overall 8th place in the rankings week 2. Looking through your schedule, 7-3, 7-3, 8-2. You've done pretty well. You've had some big wins. How are you feeling about your team right now? Where do you think you'll be now compared to your week 2 rating?
You know, I think that I've definitely jumped. Where was I rated?
8th overall before.
8th overall.
9th in batting, 5th in pitching is what you were rated.
I had to have jumped up to like 5th to 4th place is my guess.
All right. You are correct that you jumped up. You jumped up to 4th place. So you actually moved up 4 spots.
I like to see it.
Which is, I believe this is the biggest jump out of all the teams. You made a huge jump. You went from 9th in batting all the way up to 2nd in batting. And you went from 5th in pitching to 6th in pitching. So not, I guess you got a little worse there, but not much. Like your pitching score before was 27, and your pitching score week 7 is still 27. So your score didn't change at all. Just how that ranks you overall changed. But yeah, fourth overall, a point total of 62 down to 46. Like I said, low score is good. Puts you in 4th place. So yeah, you've gone way up. I put ERA, WHIP, runs, RBI, all 5 wins this year so far. And if you want to know what I'm talking about when I'm saying 5 wins so far, if you go to league and then you click on team stats, and you can look at total. This is where I get a lot of the numbers from. You can look at totals, but I look at the win-loss, and then you just find your team and you look how you've done. So, for example, in home runs, you are 4 wins, 0 losses, 3 ties on the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you've done good. Wins, saves, strikeouts, averages, all of them are 3 or less wins this year for you. So, although your team's done great, you've gone way up in the rankings. I did find it interesting. You do have, I would call them weak points to your team. Those are the 4 categories that have been tough for you. You've lost them or gotten ties in them much more than not. So the wins, saves, strikeouts, those are all 3 obviously pitching categories, and then your batting average. So that's where I would, I guess, scout your weakness as a team.
My batting average is always going to be low. And I would point out that, obviously I would expect my home runs and runs probably RBIs to all drop this and next week with Stanton out, Nimmo's out as well. Those guys both contribute to it.
Yeah, just as your rating in the categories, number 1 in runs, number 1 in home runs, number 2 in runs batted in, then 7th in stolen bases, 8th in batting average. Still, though, that if your batting average was higher, you'd probably be in the running for the number 1 batting team.
We'll see. It's a matter of tinkering.
Next, we have Aaron with Team Shane Victorones.
Victorinos?
Victorinos. Shane Victorinos. Yeah, I think that seems right. It took me a while saying it, but we got there. He was ranked number 7 in the previous ranks. That had him at 8th in batting. It had him 6th in pitching. He had a real slow start too. He went 1-8 and then 4-6 week 2, but he's still ranked 7th overall, even with that slow start early on. Since then, he tied Nick. He destroyed Chris. He destroyed Vince, 7-2 both those weeks. He just recently went 4-5-1 with me, and then obviously in week 4 you beat him 3-7. His record would be 2-4 and 1 tie if we were just doing the straight win-loss. Yeah, Aaron's team. What do you think? How do you think he stacks up compared to week 2?
He's definitely taken a jump. I'd say he was ranked, 7th, you said?
7th overall. Yep.
7th overall. Jumped 2 spots, maybe, up to 5th.
Aggressive. 2 spots. So right behind you, because you're 4th, right?
Right behind me.
Well, that's generous because he didn't move at all. He's still 7th overall. He went from a 61 rating to 62. So actually slightly worse. His batting was 8th. It's now 9th. And his pitching was 6th. It's now 7th. He has, like your team, though, similar to your team, he has 4 categories that kind of stand out that had 2 or less wins after 7 weeks. And that's saves, strikeout, ERA, and stolen bases. Not a whole lot of correlation with these categories. They don't seem related, right? Like, normally your ERA and WHIP are low, but then the other 3 are high because you're starting a lot of players. But yeah, it's weird. It's
really just have to take a look at his team and you'll find out where some of that stands out.
Yeah,
look at
and it's weird. Like his
Taylor
ERA
Rogers was his only save pitcher, really.
Yeah, so it's weird to me that his rating in ERA is 6th, but he's 4th in WHIP. And then if you look on how he's actually been doing, he's 2-5 in ERA, but he's 4-3 in WHIP. So yeah, I don't know. It's it might just be randomness. We might still need a few more weeks of data for it to really like normalize.
Wheeler has gotten back on the track. He's
Yeah.
pitching great. Wainwright is still pitching well. I think the big thing is that he's just got
Dare
a
you
lot of.
podcast without me?
Here he is.
Oh, look who's just jumping in the middle of this podcast.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I know you try to do it behind my back because you're scared my takes are too hot, but
Well, you said you couldn't do it today.
yeah, that means we reschedule, not
Okay.
that you do it without me.
I can't. No, it has to go on. The content must be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for Aaron, his RBI and average, he's 10-4. That's pretty lucky. That's a lot of his wins right there. So I don't know. Aaron's team, it's just stayed the same. It's stagnant.
His pitching is so
Yeah,
stalwart is a good word for it. It's just that they're good teams. He's got some good pitchers on good teams. Wheeler, Wainwright.
you keep referencing Wheeler, but Wheeler literally won it for me this last week, week 7. All he had to do is not play Wheeler. He put Wheeler in, and it hurt his whip enough to where I ended up winning that category, and that's how I won the week, 5-4. He had it in the bag.
He has Nestor, Webb, Alcantara is doing well. You know, it's a lot of pitchers who are on decent teams. They're bound to have good bats on the team, and they might give up runs, but at the end of the day, he'll probably take home a win for a number of those pitchers.
Yeah, he's 7th overall in pitching, and like I thought right after the draft,
That is what I'm looking at. You know, there's areas that he definitely takes advantage of.
they're older. They're injury prone. They might lose steam as the season goes on. There's risk. It's a high risk, high reward team. But that's just how the Shane Victorinos are operating. Ethan, to catch you up, what we're doing is looking at the week 2 cards and comparing them to now the week 7 cards. So
I see.
I'll give you guys a team, and then you try to guess if it improved or got worse or got better from where they were week 2 on the rankings. So my team, the Lanky Bird Ball Club, my record would be 3-2-2 if we were doing just straight win-loss. I had a rough first 2 weeks versus 2 really good teams, just right out the bat. I had to fight Lucas, and then I had to go against Ethan. But even with that bad start, 1-5-3-5, I ended up being ranked 6th overall among all the teams. That would be off roto scoring. Since then, I had a big win versus Chris, 8-2, and then I've just stalled out. Nothing but 5 wins every week. 5 versus Scott, 5 versus Vince, 5 versus Thomas, 5 versus Aaron.
I mean, obviously, you're doing better than you were doing week 2. Week 2, you're absolute trash. People weren't even expecting you to get 10 wins by week 5.
I am glad you brought that up. Yeah, I had a lot of disrespect. And you know what? I think it's disrespect to both of you guys. Because they were like, oh, Andrew lost to Lucas and Ethan? His team must be really bad. But
It really was.
you know what? Turns out your guys' teams are good. And just
I
had a
don't
slow
know
start.
about the teams. It's management. It's the upper management. We're
Right. So you guys are, of course, correct. I wouldn't crunch the numbers if they didn't favor me. I'm actually up 3 positions. I'm the 3rd highest rated team overall. I'm 6th in batting. That's still my weak spot. But you know what? That's a huge improvement because at week 2 I was 10th in batting. I was 10th place in 3 different categories and 9th in another. So my batting's much improved. I've had a lot of ground to make up. After week 2, my batting average for my team, this is 2 weeks of collected data. And remember, the first week is a longer week, right? It's like a week and a half. My batting average was .18, which is so bad. So far behind everyone else. And I'm still 10th place in batting average, but I'm just proud that I've gotten it up to .22. That's a major improvement.
I mean, you just have to look at that first week against me. I think both of us made the mistake of using all of our subs pretty quickly
Yeah.
that week. Then only to realize that it's a long week, of course. And then the next week, you used all of your subs again immediately, but in a legitimate concern to address the batting issues. And that probably team a little bit up against Ethan, but then right back on the track, started dominating. I'm building you up too much. We gotta bring him back down, Ethan. Bring him back down.
Impossible, because I'm 3rd place or higher on what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. I'm 3rd place or higher, and I'm the 3rd highest rated team overall. So I honestly think my record is not reflective of how I think I've had bad luck so far.
All I gotta say is
lot
he
of
went
ties.
5-5 against Thomas, so
I did.
how good can he really be?
5-5 versus Thomas. Who you missed it, Ethan, but Thomas has the 4th best batting team out of everyone. It's crazy.
He's a
And as
It's
you
a
can
good team.
as you can see in my build up, I'm still 6th in batting. Like, my team's not good at batting. So Thomas just matches. I think I'll always have that problem versus Thomas. I'm just not good versus teams that can bat well. And that's a big problem for me. Strikeouts, ERA, and whip. I'm 5-2 in all 3 of those categories so far this year. So yeah, I'm just completely carried by my pitching. Home runs and saves, I'm 2-2-3. So 6 of my ties have been in home runs and saves. Saves have been so hard for me. I was just starting like 5 relief pitchers every day, and it wasn't helping. So I won't say I've given up on trying to stack up saves. I'm just going to keep my 3 good guys in there and hope it works out.
And Bogart's trade definitely helped you.
Next team is Vince. Week 2, he was ranked 5th overall. It looked like he was starting off strong, right? He beat Thomas 6-3. Didn't know who Thomas was then. Beat Nick. He lost to Nick 4-6. And since then, he's had 3 more losses and 2 ties. So Vince has just spiraled. I feel like, anyway, since week 2. His record would be 1-4-2. I think if we were just doing straight wins and losses, he would be last place, right? What was Thomas? No, Thomas was 1-5. So he would be second to last right now if we were just doing straight wins and losses. Not great for him.
Yeah.
He was second in batting and eighth in pitching. How do you think he shakes out now?
I'm gonna give it a 8 and a 6.
Where do you put him overall?
I don't know.
He was fifth, right? Like it's got to go
Uh,
down. How much does it go down?
Overall,
I think 7.
is he 8?
Well, let's see. He's gone down 3 spots, down to 7th place. No, 8th place overall. Yeah, so yeah, you're right, Ethan. He went from 5th to 8th. His batting, which started off so good, 2nd place, down to 7th. Pitching, he's just stayed at 8th. So yeah, he's gotten a lot worse, and we'll cover at bats later, but he's just starting a lot less batters too, which obviously is going to hurt your batting.
I don't know. It could be a viable strategy for some people.
Ninth in ERA, 9th in WHIP, so, and also 8th in wins. So even if he was streaming pitchers, which he's not, his ERA and WHIP already suck. So I don't. It seems really dismal with his pitching, and he hasn't been getting performance out of batting. So tough spot. His best categories are saves, stolen bases, and strikeouts. His record for saves and strikeouts are 5-1-1. So that's where most of his wins have come from. Stolen bases, which he's in first place by a lot in stolen bases, right? His record there is 4-1-2. So even if you're stacking up stolen bases, it's such I don't know. The more I look into stolen bases, the more I realize you shouldn't even pay attention to the category. Like, maybe you'll win it, maybe you'll lose. But even if you have a bunch of them, it's still just so random.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Franco on his team has, I think, 4 stolen bases on the year already. Segura, who he picked up, has got 8 now.
Who I dropped.
Yeah, obviously already up at 9 stolen bases. Bobby Witt hasn't been batting great, but he's starting to bat better now. And at the very least, when he wasn't batting great, he was still running. So he's got 7 bags on the year already. So
Yeah, like I said, he's first in stolen bases by a lot, but he's still only 4-1-2 in the category. So it hasn't mattered. Even though he's dominating that category, he still lost it once and tied it twice. So I don't know. I just think it's not worth going all in on. Like if you're like, oh, I want a fast guy or I want a power guy, right? You have to like try to make that choice. Well, the power guy, if he hits a home run, that's a run. It's probably an RBI. Obviously, it helps your home run, and he can still be just as good at average. Versus stolen base guy, you're like, oh, maybe he'll give me average in runs. Like, I don't know. It's just I don't think it's really paid off. There's certain players that run and steal bases a lot, but I think it's almost always better to just add someone that's hitting the ball really well. Just hope you randomly get those stolen bases.
I mean, I think overall it's just it's a close league, a lot closer than I think we thought it would be. I mean, so I forget who said it, but this week somebody had more home runs in one day than they had all week.
Yeah.
The previous week.
Yeah, Chris.
I mean, that's just what you have to expect in a league like this. Sometimes you're going to have good weeks, sometimes you're going to have bad weeks.
And all the projections are saying there's going to be more offense. I guess it's always that way anyway. As summer comes, more offense comes.
Mm-hmm.
But this year especially because of the new balls they're using, they're supposed to be better in high humidity. So summer is normally higher humidity, and it's supposed to help the offense for some reason. So we'll see. All right, this one's actually running over an hour and a half long, so I'm going to cut it up into 2 parts. I'll pause it here, and we'll continue in episode 8, which I'll release probably later tonight. Thanks, guys.